Monday morning, welcome back. It is great to have you here to start the week on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM and streaming as always on our KCMO Talk Radio app. So yesterday was the 1-year anniversary, looking back on the near assassination of President Trump. And if you did not see the video, and I understand if you didn't, Sunday, church, doing things, family time, whatever it might be. If you did not see the video that the White House put out on YouTube yesterday, oh my goodness. Even if you're not like a diehard Trump supporter, I mean, unless you have major TDS, I genuinely think that this video that I will play for you here on KCMO is going to give you chills. 1 year after the president of the United States, who then, of course, was the candidate and a former president, found himself within a quarter inch of losing his life.
Donald was the young man who was going to conquer mankind.
He takes chances that would make a less daring man shudder.
To think about the arc of where he's been in, it's like some sort of mythical story or something.
This sounds like political presidential talk to me.
Donald Trump seems to always get stronger when challenged.
My God, that guy's got resilience.
Those who deal with you underestimate you and live to regret it. It's always good to be underestimated. It is not about politics. It's about our love for this great country, America, and we're not going to let it fail. I will fight like no one has ever fought before.
Trump is the bodyguard of Western civilization.
You want to talk about a fighter, a walk through fire? He's an absolute savage.
He knows that this is much bigger than him. This is about the American people. They have no idea what they have unleashed. He was ready to go face the cameras and come out swinging.
What will future Americans say we did in our brief time here on Earth? It will be defined by your vision, your perseverance, and your grit. Nothing will sway us, nothing will slow us, and no one will ever stop us. We are Americans. Ambition is our heritage. Greatness is our birthright. And the future belongs to us.
That video dropped by the White House yesterday morning. We put up on the KCMO Talk Radio Facebook page if you want to see it there. If that doesn't give you some chills, if that doesn't give you some feeling of American pride, you don't have to love this guy to listen to that video and come away thinking, man, that was good. We are in a damn good spot right now. That was my takeaway as I watched that video. And then we got this yesterday from the White House, a presidential message that came out on the anniversary of the tragedy in Butler, Pennsylvania. And the president's writing here in part, 1 year ago today at 6:11 p.m., 8 minutes after taking the stage on the grounds of Butler Farms to address thousands of Americans gathered at a campaign rally, rifle fire broke out. An assassin's bullet came within a quarter inch of ending my life and silencing our movement to restore American greatness. Yet by the hand of providence and the grace of Almighty God, my life was spared. As we commemorate 1 year since the harrowing events of July 13th, 2024, we reaffirm that the American spirit has and will always triumph over forces of evil and destruction. He goes on to write here, however, one name stands above all for selfless service and ultimate sacrifice on that fateful day. The world will never forget the tragic loss of Corey Comparator, a firefighter, veteran, and devoted husband and father. When gunfire erupted, Corey did not hesitate to protect his wife and two daughters. He died a hero, and we are eternally grateful for his inspiring love, valor, and faithfulness. The president wraps up the statement here yesterday that came down at about 7 p.m. last night. It remains my firm conviction that God alone saved me that day for a righteous purpose, to restore our beloved republic to greatness and to rescue our nation from those who seek its ruin. 1 year after the attempt on my life in Butler, our country is in the midst of a new golden age. History will remember the would-be assassin for his cowardice and failure. but the magnificent legacy of the heroes of July 13th, 2024 will forever be etched upon the heart of our nation. Today, we pay tribute to the spirit of love, unity, and resilience. And we proclaim with one voice the epic battle cry that has reverberated all across the world. Fight, fight, fight. That was President Trump. Now, this was the first time in my life that I had seen a presidential candidate or been alive for a presidential candidate or a president, for that matter, being shot. I wasn't alive when Reagan got shot. Obviously, wasn't alive when JFK was shot and killed. So it's one of those things that for me will be one of those top 3 historical moments that stands out in my mind. You know, I think back to where I was. I was actually about to put chicken on the grill when my phone started blowing up. Trump shot. Did you see Trump shot? Can you believe Trump just got shot? And, you know, I try to, within reason, take a little downtime on the weekend. So I'm not locked into like Fox News or CNN or certainly not MSNBC, but you get the point. I'm not watching cable news on the weekends. I don't really do it. So then I'm sitting there and my phone's blowing up and I'm like, what are they talking about? So I'm on the back deck. I stop. I'm about to put this chicken on the grill. I turn on the TV outside and you can't get enough of seeing what you're seeing. You can't believe you're seeing what you're seeing. And it's one of those moments that I know for all of us, looking back on that time from 1 year ago yesterday, will forever be burnt into our minds. And especially if you're of a certain age, because you weren't alive for Reagan, you weren't alive for JFK, and also it's just a different world, right? You're now taking out your phone, and within seconds, you're seeing this on loop. It's on every television set, every channel, on loop. And you could see it over and over and over again. And still, as we sit here 1 year and 1 day later, it remains amazing to me that we're looking at this situation and the President of the United States is alive today to talk about it. Someone who never uses graphs, never turns his head, never does any of that during rallies. Why? Because he likes to be locked in with his crowd. Selena Zito, who was at the rally and has covered a bunch of those on behalf of President Trump, talked about this on Friday on the Vince Show right here on KCMO at 11 a.m. And she noted that having gone to all these rallies, Trump never really looks back at a graph. He doesn't really use charts. Why? Because he likes to be locked in. He likes to be like an entertainer. He likes to be like a rock star, locked in with the crowd, eye to eye, not using things to take his mind and his focus off of the people that he's talking to. But he did that. And in that rare moment, that is what saved his life 1 year ago yesterday. Now, in the meantime, the president spent some time with soccer over the weekend. The World Cup, of course, is coming to Kansas City in 1 year. The president was in a very celebratory soccer mood yesterday. Well, Mark and John were fired up about that. I had to do some research on this soccer stuff to get ready for the show this morning. I wasn't digging it, but I'm digging less the 85 degrees here in the studio that we've got this morning.
Well, yeah, that's part of our World Cup promotion. We've set the climate control on Dubai today, seems like, right? I walked in, that hit me right in the face.
It is 84 degrees right now in the studio.
It is coming down, so.
We could do a live show. I got doors open in here, the whole thing. We could welcome in an audience this morning.
We may hear Mike and Mackenzie from down the hall any moment now.
But as we get it rolling here, the president was in a celebratory soccer mood yesterday. The World Cup comes to Kansas City. What did the president have to say about the future of soccer in America? I love him, but I can't agree with this take. Coming up next. So yesterday, the president of the United States found himself at MetLife Stadium. That is the football home for the New York Jets and the New York Giants. And he was there. And he joined the English soccer club Chelsea on the field to celebrate their victory in the 2025 FIFA Club World Cup. So, of course, the World Cup is coming to Kansas City. Basically, 1 year from today, this will be happening here in Kansas City. But there's all these different, little club events that are happening the year leading up to it, and it's hard to keep track. This is the problem for soccer. And I guess you could say this about one of my favorite sports, golf, to some degree. But I feel with soccer, there's so many different layers.
Yeah.
There's
No, you're not wrong.
There's a lot to try to make sense of what's
under
what.
21, under 18, you got men's, you got women's, all countries, all nations. This club thing was just like if you just took the NFL and CFL and the various leagues and you throw the better clubs into a tournament. I think it looked like it was a little too big for as long as it went on over the summer. So it's basically a preseason training thing for most of the clubs. So we'll see if Chelsea can replicate their form, so to speak.
Yep. Well, they won yesterday, and they beat France's Paris Saint-Germain 3-0. So Trump's there at MetLife, and did you see the photos and videos of him celebrating with Chelsea after the fact? As if he's like, what would they call him, the manager of the club?
Yeah.
Those were great.
I saw a couple photos. It looked pretty fun.
He was having the time of his life on that stage. Remember, this is a guy who's owned sports franchises, right? Most probably, infamously, the New Jersey Generals. So he's a sports fan. We know he loves UCF now, or UFC. We know that he's obviously always had a soft spot for sports. But to see Donald Trump on stage one day after he nearly lost his life, celebrating this Club World Cup championship with Chelsea is one of those moments that looks photoshopped to me. It looks like it's generated by artificial intelligence, but it wasn't. And they looked totally fine having Trump on stage with them yesterday. I mean, they looked like they were just having the time of their lives with Trump up there on that stage. So Trump's talking about this, and he mentioned the World Cup. He said this to DAZN Sports Network.
It's about unity. It's about everybody getting together and a lot of love between countries. And this is such an I guess this is probably the most international sport. Yeah. So it can really bring the world together.
So remember, this World Cup is coming to the United States because of Trump's first term. That administration is the one who got the World Cup to the United States for 2026. So obviously he's excited about this, and because of these unique non-consecutive terms, he gets to be the guy who's in the White House when the World Cup is actually happening after getting them here during his first term in office. So obviously this is going to be something he takes a lot of pride in. He's there yesterday at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, and he's there with the FIFA president and a bunch of other people as well. So he clearly cares about this event going well here in Kansas City and in all the other cities across the country that are hosting games. But there's going to be this sentiment, I believe, from people who otherwise would cheer on this event that they want to see it fail. And they want to see it fail miserably. And that's because, well, it's President Trump. They would be totally fine with the World Cup bombing out and not meeting expectations and then saying, well, these people from other countries, they just don't want to come here. They're afraid that Tom Homan's going to round them up and what? Put them in alligator Alcatraz? Like, what are we realistically talking about here? Tickets that are going to be a fortune. People who are coming from other countries who are going to be very much well-to-do. No matter what, if you think that ICE, if you think so lowly of ICE, and you think so lowly of people in charge, that they are going to round up people who are here for World Cup games and do what with them exactly, I don't really know. I don't even understand how to put this conspiracy theory together. But that the World Cup will not meet expectations because of Trump? Listen to what the guy just said there. And even if you don't take him at his word, you and I both know that Trump, as the showman, wants to make this thing look huge, as he might say. He's all about a show, and there's no one who wants this thing to look as good as President Trump will want it to look next year, John.
Two things will be true at once. The demand for tickets will be high, so it's like if somebody doesn't go, there's someone in line willing to take their place. But the media will go find everybody they can who's cowering in the corner.
Yeah.
And so the echo chamber is going to tell you, oh, a lot of people stayed away. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, it's, excuse me, pardon me, can I get through to the restroom? Excuse me, pardon me.
You are so spot on with that. Not only from the national media, but I guarantee you we will get some of this in Kansas City. They will find a couple of people who would have loved to have had their Uncle Nico in town for a little World Cup action. But, we talked to Uncle Nico, and he's like, I don't know if I can make it. I don't want to get rounded up by Trump and sent to Alligator Alcatraz. It's not going to happen. But they will find those people, and they will create these talking points to fit a narrative. Now, one thing Trump did end up saying, and this is what I want to get your thoughts on here on KCMO. Trump said yesterday as well that he thinks that the United States will remain very competitive on the soccer field.
You talk about winning, you talk about making America the greatest again. Do you see any instance in where America could start dominating in football on a global stage?
Well, I can tell you we're doing very well on the other stage, on the political stage, on the financial stage. I was just in Saudi Arabia, I was in Qatar, I was in UAE. Here we have Qatar and, the big presence they have. But all of the leaders, and then you look at NATO, all of the leaders said a year ago your country was dead, and now you have the hottest country in the world. There's a lot of truth to that. We were doing very badly as a country. We had an incompetent administration, and now we have a hot country. It's really hot. And I think the soccer is going to be very hot here, too. It already is. It's gotten, a lot of play, and I think with the play come the great players, and I think it'll do very well.
That's courtesy of DAZN Sports. Only Trump can pull off the weave where he somehow ties in MAGA to NATO funding to American soccer's future, right? So I disagree with that. There is no evidence that American soccer for men is going to be able to compete with the best of the best in the world anytime soon, because our best athletes are still not playing soccer. Don't get me wrong. And I say this as somebody who, as an assistant coach for kindergarten soccer, is 8-0 in my career. But we got a long ways to go in this country on this sport. Our best athletes just don't do it. And until that happens, we are not going to make American soccer great. Not again, because it was never great. We got to make it great first before we make it great again. And there's no evidence to suggest that for the men, that's happening anytime soon. Can Kansas City media be great? Just for once, outside of KCMO. I'll explain that next. Well, congratulations to our good friend Heather Hall. You may recall she was the councilwoman for the 1st district up in the Northland for Kansas City, Missouri City Council, and she was in that role during a very critical time in Kansas City's history. The stupidity and the insanity of 2020, right? When people came to the conclusion that we should, not have cops, that we needed psychiatrists to instead go door to door to handle certain calls to people's homes and not have an armed police officer. It was just a weird time. And we needed good, solid pro-cop voices, especially in Kansas City. And that person was Heather Hall. Now, she got termed out a couple of years ago, so she is no longer on the Kansas City, Missouri City Council. But on Friday, Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe named Heather Hall as his pick to fill a vacancy on the Board of Police Commissioners. Now, as you may know, if you don't know, Kansas City, Missouri is run in the police department by a Board of Police Commissioners. The City Council does not have direct oversight of the police department. And this dates back, 100 years to the Pendergast era. And a lot of people in Kansas City, Missouri actually like it. It's a way to keep the politics from City Hall out of the police department. Now, the mayor of Kansas City is on the Board of Police Commissioners. That's Quentin Lucas, but then the rest are appointed by the governor. They do have to be Kansas City, Missouri city residents. So Dawn Kramer's out just because her time served is up, and Heather Hall is coming on. I can't think of anybody better in Kansas City than Heather Hall to be on the Board of Police Commissioners. She's married to retired KCPD Sergeant Eben Hall. Good guy as well. And the Kansas City Star made a big deal out of this. They, of course, talked to activists. I put up my air quotes when I say that. And these activists were not happy that Heather Hall was picked as the person to be on the Kansas City, Missouri Board of Police Commissioners. If the activists are upset, to me, that's a great pick. If we needed further reason for why Heather Hall, who will be on the show this morning at 8:20, is worthy of being on the Board of Police Commissioners, it's the activist community being all upset about it that is just the icing on the cake. Cheryl Ferguson, an organizer with It's Time for Justice, called Heather Hall, quote, the worst appointment ever, and the Marjorie Taylor Greene locally. Okay. Heather Hall's IQ might be 3x Marjorie Taylor Greene. That is quite an insult to Heather Hall. Okay? They are not even in the same galaxy when it comes to mental acuity. It's not even close. Cheryl Ferguson, with this group that no one's really ever heard of in Kansas City, added here to the Kansas City Star, she doesn't know how to interact with her city outside of her bubble. Adding here, there's nothing wrong with necessarily being pro-cop, except for when you have cops that are vilifying certain neighborhoods in Kansas City. And until the governor sees fit that there needs to be an appointment from those neighborhoods to the board, you're never going to have a board that works for the city. You know, what these people never do is they never say what they would do differently. They never say why having somebody from a certain part of Kansas City would magically result in homicides going down in high crime parts of Kansas City. Heck, you know where the homicides have actually increased the most in this town over the last year? It's in Heather Hall's old district. It's the Northland, where there has been the largest uptick in homicides in Kansas City from last year. North Patrol last year at this time had 5 homicides. This year there are 7. In the Shoal Creek district, last year there were 0 homicides. This year there have been 8. So maybe when you look at it on a percentage basis, the Northland has seen the largest increase in homicides of any district in Kansas City. Maybe it actually makes sense to have somebody like Heather Hall from the Northland on the Board of Police Commissioners, John.
You know, what also makes sense is if you're going to spout that argument, you better be in support of the Jackson County prosecutor, Melissa Johnson.
Yeah, excellent point as
She
well.
is from the area which you describe.
Yep.
Which you falsely describe as being vilified.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because you're right about that. And Melissa Johnson's, as far as we can tell, doing a really good job so far. And you know what? We need to all be rooting for her. I don't know if she's perfect. I don't know if she was going to be the best pick, but I do know this much. She ain't Jean Peters Baker. She's got this thing trending in the right direction in Jackson County, Missouri. There was also an insinuation here in this Kansas City Star piece. Wife of former KCPG sergeant picked for police board. Shame on Kehoe, activists say. That is such an insult to Heather Hall to simply imply that she's the wife of a former KCPD sergeant. She was on the Kansas City, Missouri City Council, won re-election, had a great relationship with the police department. The way the headline is written insinuates that she's just basically, and not that there's anything wrong with this, trust me, as I can tell, having a wife who stays at home is actually harder than having someone at times who's going to an office somewhere. Trust me, that's a hard job. You want to talk about a thankless, difficult job? That's it. And I'm seeing that firsthand with 3 kids, 6 and under. But the insinuation here that she is only being selected based on the headline and describing her as the wife of former KCPD sergeant, like honestly, and I'm not saying this as some kind of insult to her husband, Eben, who I know and who is a really good guy. More people in this town will know Heather than they will Eben because she's been in a position that's forward-facing and that is a, public position for a very long time at this point.
Not necessarily closely tied, but it would be like saying Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce kind of a thing, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm trying to think of an analogy. Taylor Swift's boyfriend loses 20 pounds over the summer.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, you mean the guy who's going to be in the Hall of Fame? The guy who was a Kansas City Chief and, one of the all-time great tight ends? Are you kidding me? Or Travis Kelce's Travis Kelce's girlfriend prepares to release new song. It's like, wait, no, she's the artist of a generation. That is an extreme analogy there, Mark, but it's a good one, and it works. And I know Mark's already thinking Chiefs, man. He's got his Mariners gear on this morning, but he's always thinking Chiefs, and we love that here on KCMO. So that in and of itself, that headline from the Kansas City Star is so insulting. And then you also have to remember this as well. Here in Kansas City, they want to make a big deal out of Heather Hall and her husband and their relationship and her being picked to be on the Board of Police Commissioners. I might have missed it, but I have never seen the Kansas City Star point out and make a big deal out of the fact that the Director of Public Works in Kansas City, Michael Shaw, is married to Rayanna Park Shaw, who is on the Kansas City, Missouri City Council and has more or less direct oversight on some of the big budget items that happen with Public Works. You want to talk about a conflict of interest at City Hall? That would be one that the Kansas City Star would consider digging into if they were actually an honest journalistic outlet. They're not. So they'll write about Heather Hall and say, wife of a former KCPD sergeant is on the Board of Police Commissioners. Oh, no, she was on the city council. But nothing to see here when it comes to the Director of Public Works clearing a couple $100,000, married to someone on the city council who, by the way, wants to be the mayor, might be Mayor Lucas's handpicked successor here in a couple of years when all is said and done. Nothing about that relationship, nothing about that marriage, nothing to see here. Don't you worry. You almost have to feel bad for Trump on this one, don't you? Let me explain. 7:05, good morning. Glad you're here on KCMO. President Trump just had objectively the best month of his presidency. He took out the Tehran nuclear threat with minimal blowback when you really look back on it. He's ended the border crisis. He's actively deporting people in large numbers, which is a popular policy right now in this country. It was not during his first term. It is right now. He passed a lot of his legislative priorities through the budget bill. He's moved on 80-20 issues like trans participation in women's sports. He's pushing towards normalization with Syria. Had a bunch of Supreme Court wins as well. The economy is mostly withstanding a lot of the tariff stuff for now. I'll put the caveat in there. And instead, you have some of the biggest key MAGA influencers giving speeches and going bonkers on social media and also being completely dismissive of a lot of facts centered around Jeffrey Epstein, a dead guy. Think about that, right? On Friday, the President of the United States was touring Kerrville, Texas. He was meeting with families who had lost loved ones, lost homes, lost everything in these historic floods that took place 2 weeks ago on July 4th. And what was happening on social media? Well, the news cycle is being taken over by reports that FBI Director Kash Patel and his sidekick Dan Bongino were threatening to quit. Now, you know and I know how this game works. That stuff gets out oftentimes because the people involved or the people around them want it to get out. So that whole news cycle on Friday was overtaken by the drama inside of the FBI in the wake of all the Jeffrey Epstein nonsense. Donald Trump, I believe, in that moment was getting undermined by his own people. The people who he took a chance on, who he put in very important positions of power in this country, who he's still relying on. I think his own people were somewhat sabotaging him on Friday. He was doing a really good job in that moment in Texas, touring these sites, meeting with families, being empathetic to people who had lost everything. And you know and I know the national media would much rather highlight infighting within the Trump administration than like just covering the news and, you know, what he's doing down there and showing the human side of this guy. So if they have a choice between showing the human side of Donald Trump in Kerrville, Texas, or talking about how his FBI director and his assistant FBI director are pissed off and want to quit, what do you think they're going to do? Of course they're going to cover the latter. Of course they're going to cover the latter. And that's exactly what they ended up doing on Friday. So they took that news cycle completely away from Donald Trump. And listen, to Trump's credit, he didn't sound like a guy last night that was all that bothered by the whole thing. I mean, he was asked about Dan Bongino yesterday, Joint Andrews Air Base, after he got back to work last night, and here's what he said.
Oh, I think so. I did. I spoke to him today. Dan Bongino, very good guy. I've known him a long time. I've done his show many, many times. And he sounded terrific, actually. No, I think he's in good shape.
So Trump isn't looking to create more drama inside of his administration. He's like, no, Dan and I are good. It's good. I like him. We're all set. Dan's in a good place. And then Kash Patel, his FBI director, also came out over the weekend and said this is a bunch of nonsense. Okay, I'm here. I'm the FBI director. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not threatening to quit. He didn't do any of that. So it makes you wonder why this stuff was getting out in the first place and where this was coming from and the why behind it, right? See, this is the difficult part, though. When you live in a place and you overpromise people from a media perspective and then you actually have to go do the job, if you don't come through in the way that some people expect you to, they're going to point the finger at you. They're going to call you a failure. They're going to say you're part of a cover-up. They're going to say you're part of some kind of swamp culture. No matter what the facts are, that's what's going to come your way. And I think for some like Bongino, they're now experiencing that the hard way. It's a lot easier sometimes being on the other side. A lot easier. And then you get on the inside and it's suddenly like, well, you know, maybe there's actually more here. There's more nuance. Maybe the facts weren't, where I wanted them to go. And now you got to do a little CYA. You know, with all these people talking a big game, many part of the online right, how many people are aware that Steve Bannon has 15 hours of video interviewing Jeffrey Epstein? Why doesn't Steve Bannon release those videos? I mean, if we're going to play this song and dance and just kind of accuse people based on, you know, some cockamamie ideas that may come to fruition and mean something at some point if we try to dot the I's and cross the T's and make of this what we want to make of it, why don't we have conversations like that? I'm not insinuating anything. I'm just asking questions. Isn't that the phrase of the day? I'm just sitting here asking questions. That's all I'm doing. I mean, Steve Bannon's been very vocal on this. He's got 15 hours of video interviewing Jeffrey Epstein. Anyone seen those videos? He's got them. Not like he can blame the government for these, right? Not like he can say that somebody else has them. Where's that conversation? Why don't we go there? I'd love to see what's in them. I'd love to see what they talked about. And you can't blame the deep state for having those videos. So at a time when you have the president of the United States having just a rip-roaring few weeks on his policy, for it to be overshadowed by this, to me, is a total letdown of the people who claim they've got his back. The people who claim, and also, by the way, take credit for Donald Trump's success, which frankly, nobody should, right? I mean, there's a very small group of people that can take any credit for Donald Trump's political success, like a couple of very close confidants, maybe Elon Musk because of his funding during the 2024 campaign. Maybe you can find half a dozen people, but that's really it. Online influencers think much more highly of themselves than, frankly, they should, and they're completely missing the moment right now. As I posted on X over the weekend at 913-408, or No, that's the phone number. On X at Pete Mundo. That's where you can find me there. And you do with this information what you want. But regular people want to live a decent life. They want to afford a home, raise kids, save money, and not really think about their government. Joe Biden failed at this. As a result, Trump got reelected. The online right, obsessed with Jeffrey Epstein, is way out of touch with everyday Americans. Let's go to Alfonso in Blue Springs. Got a minute for you, my man. What's happening?
You way off on this one. Donald Trump ran on transparency. Pam Bondi got on TV talking trash. And now you're not going to release anything? That's on them. You got to hold yourself to a higher standard. You created the standard by running like that with the JFK files and all that. The same thing applies. It makes you look guilty because people believe that you're in those files. Transparency means you release that information and let it go, and then the story goes away. By not releasing it, you make the story worse.
So you're saying it's on Trump or Bondi?
It's on Trump. He's the leader. You ran on transparency, and you're not giving it to us. And you let her, your mouthpiece, get out there talking about she had the files. So two stories can't be true at the same time. Release the files, and the story goes away. That's on him.
Here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say to that, Alfonso, and thank you, my man. I appreciate it. If Trump came out and maybe admitted that he was saying some of these things for cheap applauses at rallies, I actually think it would help him. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. Paul in KCMO, real quick, Paul, go ahead, buddy.
Hey, I agree with you. If I hear that name, Laura Loomer, I think I'm going to go crazy again. MSNBC has been running this thing all morning. They're just giving red meat to these far-left Democrats. I don't care about Epstein out here in flyover country. I care about the tariff policy. I care about our foreign policy and what Mr. Trump's doing right now. So it's ridiculous. They're just feeding the Democrats for the midterms.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you, man.
Brother.
Have a great day. We got both sides of it there. We'll do more of it here on KCMO. Yesterday, President Trump was asked plenty about the fact that it was 1 year since he nearly lost his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. Spent the day in New Jersey watching some FIFA Club World Cup action. Of course, the World Cup coming here to Kansas City in 1 year. But what stood out to me was the way the president answered the question late in the evening when he got back to the D.C. area about how he was processing the 1 year anniversary of the day that he nearly lost his life. And he answered it in a way that I would say in 2025, most people wouldn't answer it. He answered it in a way that's not in vogue today to answer a question like this. But he answered it in a way that I think was attractive to most of the American people, especially to most of the people who voted for him. Here's what he said.
On this 1 year anniversary of Butler, what was going through your mind this morning when you woke up? I know that you're praising God you're alive, but a lot of people want to know how you're taking this day on this 1 year anniversary.
God was protecting me. Maybe because God wanted to see our country do better or do really well, make America great again. But God was protecting me, Brian. I'll tell you, it's the more you think about it, the more you see it. But no, I don't like to think about it much. You know, I have a job to do, so I don't like to think about it much. It's a little bit of a dangerous profession being president, but I really don't like to think about it too much. I think you're better off not thinking about it.
I love that answer. I absolutely freaking love that answer. Now, we're in a world where you've got to be very in tune with your feelings and your emotions. And there are times when I think that matters, right? And that's important as a husband, a wife, a father, a mother, a son, a daughter, sister, brother, whatever it might be. There are times when that obviously matters in your life, and you need to be introspective. You need to be a little more emotional, a little more vulnerable. All that stuff's important. But Trump's basically saying, I'm not here to spend a lot of time on that. It's a dangerous job, and, you know, the numbers would suggest, based on the amount of assassinations and near misses, it is a dangerous job being president. I know we don't think about it like that in a traditional sense, but, you know, percentages would suggest it is a dangerous job, no matter which side of the political aisle you're on. And Trump just came out and said, I don't like to think about it. I got a job to do. I'm here to do that job on behalf of the American people. And for a guy who never needed this, right? Guy who had, just, and still does, don't get me wrong, has an incredible life. But the guy was beloved on both sides of the political aisle, had more money than he could ever spend, more money than he ever knew what to do with. Like, even if you didn't vote for the man, his life did not get inherently better after he entered the political arena. They tried to obviously take as much money from him as they could. They tried to throw him in jail. He nearly lost his life. And then we wonder why successful, regular people don't want to get involved in politics. Geez, I can't imagine why. You want to know why regular folks want no part of this scene, whether it's a county commission race or running for president of the United States? It's not appealing. Even if you feel like you want to give back to your country in 2025, you're not going to run for office. First off, you're limited in terms of what you can do. And you're like, you know what? I'll go volunteer and do a mission with my church, or, I'll go help some charity that I have a real passion for. I'm not running for office. It's thankless. I'm limited in my powers. Unless you're motivated largely by ego and attention and possibly fame, you're not going to get into that line of work. And I'm not suggesting everybody that is in that line of work is there for the wrong reasons, but too many are. And that's why we have just really, really unimpressive people in our political landscape, from the federal level to the state level to the local levels, in way too many cases, because they're motivated for the wrong reasons. But Trump answering that question the way he did and said, I don't really like to think about it. That's not what the media wants, but it's the right answer. Because the American people, we think about it. I think about where I was. And, we talked about this a little bit this morning in a Touch Center on Friday leading up to yesterday's anniversary. But you haven't really heard Trump in multiple interviews now getting asked about this and really saying anything outside of what he's already said, which is basically, God was on my side. I feel for the families, or the family that lost a loved one that day. And basically, I'm moving on. I've got a job to do. And I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad that God was on my side. That's all he says. And I respect the heck out of his answer on that front. And, I think that that's the right answer that a lot of the American people appreciate. Even if there is a little more introspection privately and a little more emotion privately, it doesn't necessarily in this moment need to be on display publicly. Now, speaking of things that are on display publicly, that would be the beef that continues between President Trump and Jerome Powell, the Fed chair. Trump is just crushing this guy right now. He's continuing to just beat up Jerome Powell. He wants interest rates lowered. We continue to drive up that federal debt, $37 trillion. And now we've got billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars that we are spending to service the debt of the country. It remains unsustainable. So last night, the president said this about Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
I think if Jerome Powell stepped down, it would be a great thing. I don't know that he's going to, but he should. Jerome Powell's been very bad for our country. We should have the lowest interest rate on earth, and we don't. He just refuses to do it.
Now, maybe that's just Trump being hyperbolic, but if we had the lowest interest rates on earth, we'd be a third world country. Remember that graph that Caroline Leavitt showed at the White House press briefing a couple of years ago, or a couple of weeks ago, where she showcased all these countries that have lower interest rates than America? To use Trump's words, they were all S-hole countries for the most part. Like, they were bottom of the barrel, pieces of crap countries. There's a reason that they have low interest rates. They have to. They're third world operations that would be even in worse shape if their interest rates were anywhere close to ours. If we just artificially lower our rates right now, you are going to see inflation come back. There's no doubt in my mind. And nothing would hurt the regular worker right now more than inflation coming back to the forefront. That's why what has to happen is that Congress actually needs to cut spending. And they failed to do it in the big, beautiful bill in any meaningful way. They did some of it, not enough of it. I understand the politics of why they couldn't do more of it, but look at this little $9 billion rescissions package they're trying to pass. Claw back $9 billion in spending for USAID and NPR and PBS. It's like they can't even get that done. I saw Roger Marshall here, a Kansas U.S. Senator. He was on one of the cable news channels this morning going out there and basically lobbying for this $9 billion rescissions package cut. Just do it. I mean, how is it possible that a Republican Congress can't get through $9 billion in cuts for NPR, PBS, and USAID? How is this taking as long as it's taken? So Trump's frustration on that front should really be with his own caucus, should really be with the Republicans in the House and the Senate that can't get $9 billion in cuts done on no-brainer stuff. Never mind the big things that have to happen to get the country fiscally on the right track. Jerome Powell was way late back in 21 on inflation. He did maybe try to lower the rates last year to help Joe Biden before the election or Kamala Harris before the election. All those things are fair to critique and point out. It doesn't mean that he's wrong right now to hold the rates where they're at. Because the far bigger problem when it comes to our issues and devaluing the dollar is Congress not doing its job. And that's where Trump's got to corral these guys and gals and get them going on that front. Now, speaking of NPR and PBS, something happened over the weekend on one of our local stations. And I was just chomping at the bit to get in there and get in the mix and get in the conversation. We'll tell you what happened coming up next on KCMO Talk Radio. I was chomping at the bit to jump through the television and join the panel on Kansas City Week in Review over the weekend. I watch it. I'm on there once in a while. I don't know, every couple of months or so. Whenever my good friend Nick Haynes feels like he can get away with having me on there without pissing off the whole NPR staff and PBS staff, he has me on, which I appreciate. I mean, to his credit, he is looking for diverse viewpoints on that show. They're hard to find around Kansas City media, but I'm happy to do the job whenever called upon. But it's a good show. They cover the Kansas City news cycle in a very efficient way for the week prior. So I watch it. I mean, Nick does a great job in terms of hosting that show, and he has great pacing on the show. And, you know, he and I are on the same page because I can tell when someone's dragging on and he's like, come on, get your ass, spit it out, and let's keep the show moving. He understands the importance of pacing in media. And I'm watching over the weekend, and of course they're talking about, you know, the big beautiful bill and Medicaid and the impacts on Kansas and Missouri and a lot of the things that we covered last week on the show. So this comes up, and Nick throws out a question that was asked by a viewer. And then it got responded to by NPR newsman Brian Ellison. And here's what had me ready to jump through the TV.
Rights. How does removing people who are physically capable of working from the Medicaid program could actually lead to the closing of rural hospitals, Brian?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Richard. The reality is that is a talking point that has been part of the support for cutting Medicaid that is not actually borne out by the facts. KFF had a study earlier this spring that said that studied Americans under the age of 65 who are on Medicaid. 64% of them are working. 12% of them who are not working because they're caregiving. 10% are not working because they've been injured. 7% are not working because they are in school as students. In fact, only 8% of Americans on Medicaid under the age of 65 are either retired or looking for work or not looking for work. There's a really small percentage. That's not who's affected the most by these Medicaid cuts. It's a broader cross-section of people.
That has nothing to do with the question. First off, citing the Kaiser Family Foundation, that's just a liberal think tank, and, you know, they're going to skew stats however they want to skew them. But the question was a simple one from a reader to Kansas City PBS, and good on that reader, Richard. The question was, and I'll play it again here real quick so you can hear it. I'm not going to replay the whole answer, but the question.
Rights. How does removing people who are physically capable of working from the Medicaid program could actually lead to the closing of rural hospitals, Brian?
It's not. And he never answered that question. He just threw out all this data from the Kaiser Family Foundation, which is, at best, a left-of-center think tank operation. And then you say, well, 65% of people are working under 65 on Medicaid, 12% are caregivers, 10% are injured, only 8% are retired, looking or not looking for work under the age of 65 on Medicaid. So only theoretically then, that 8% might be in danger of losing their Medicaid. And if they go work for 20 hours a week or they go volunteer for 20 hours a week, they're not losing anything. So rolling out these stats from this think tank doesn't answer the question that was posed there. How will rural hospitals go bankrupt by the new Medicaid policies that were implemented in the big, beautiful bill? And the answer is they're not going to, because they're not targeting the hospitals themselves. They're targeting individuals who might be abusing the system. That's it. The issue with rural hospitals run much deeper. It's more about the problems that exist in rural America, whether it's the healthcare industry, the public safety industry, where they've got, I know guys who are in rural Kansas, right? They're running sheriff's departments, and they're paying like $14 an hour to a guy in an entry level to carry a gun and work at the sheriff's department. It's an embarrassment. There are issues in rural America, and to suggest that the big, beautiful bill's changes to Medicaid is the thing that will drive hospitals into bankruptcy, it's just not the case, John.
When in doubt, dump numbers. The big number dump is what they do. They don't answer the question. It's just, 17% of pi r squared is.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's what this was. Okay? This was a terrible answer that provided no insight, no intel, and had nothing to do with the question that was asked. It's just, let me read you these percentages from a liberal think tank, and it's like, okay, and I kept waiting for that. And, at least give me something to work with here, right? Something that at least proves your point. There was nothing there that proved the point on why rural hospitals are going to go belly up because of the big, beautiful bill. Nothing whatsoever. So these issues run much deeper. But once again, if you just want a big talking point, I guess you'll get it on this stuff, because once again, we're all going to die, right? that's the name of the game.
Right?
Eventually, yes.
See, that'll be true at some point.
Yes. Roger Marshall, Kansas U.S. Senator, he actually was talking about this with CNBC over the weekend, and he alluded to the fact that we have 7 million healthy American men of working age who are not working right now. And we've talked about that number that's been out there for many years now. He said, let's help those people find a job, help them get off Medicaid. And that's the big thing. There's something that going back into the workforce does for you. I've seen it firsthand with friends who have been out of work for a little bit, and then they get back into the office setting, so to speak. They got some swagger, some confidence, lose some weight. It's just good for them. It's healthy to be a productive member of society. It's healthy to challenge yourself. I'll give you an anecdotal example. Keatsman's buddy at Window World, we got some new windows in the house a few months ago. And Window World did a tremendous job. Not that you need to hear me talk about it, but they did a great job on our windows. And for 3 months now, I have delayed putting up the blinds that we had up because it wasn't obvious to me how to do it. The way the windows were put in, I couldn't put the blinds back into the holes that they were in because these windows were wider. So I'm looking at this thing. I can't really figure out how to do it. No one's going to confuse me as the handyman. That's just not who I am. I do a decent job. I try. But yesterday, it was just me and Charlotte, the little one. Mom had the older two out. And I said, I can figure this out. So the first one took me an hour. I figured out how to screw these things in the right place and get the blinds up. And then I did 6 more of them. And each one obviously was faster and faster and faster. And I'm telling you what, that made my week. There's nothing I did here at work. There's nothing I did on this show in the last 5 days that made me as proud as putting up 7 blinds yesterday, John.
You came in showing them like you were out fishing or something, with your catch.
Yeah.
Got pictures here. Look at that. And this is at sunset.
Yeah, well.
This one's as the sun comes up with the fog.
Look at my finger. I even got this. I was bleeding yesterday.
Drew blood.
I drew
good.
blood.
Mm-hmm.
I got a Band-Aid on my finger here. It's my pointer finger on my right hand, which makes it tough to scroll on the mouse, which is the most heavy lifting I normally do during the show.
You're going to have to contact OSHA.
Yeah, exactly. I'm suing someone. But it's like, it's those things that you do, whether it's in your work, whether it's in your private life. Like, sure, could I pay someone to do that? I guess, but you know what? I felt so good about myself after doing that, and you can't put a price tag on things like that. And all we're asking people to do in this country is go volunteer, work 20 hours a week. It will be good for America as a whole.